Marcus Chen stared at the holographic contract floating above his desk. The alien symbols slowly translating themselves into readable English through his neural implant. The words seemed impossible, yet here they were, glowing softly in the dim light of his cramped apartment on Luna Station. Marriage contract. Interspecies Union Protocol, 7749X. Read the header, in crisp blue text. He rubbed his tired eyes and read it again. 3 months ago, humanity had made first contact with the Zelhari Confederation, a peaceful alliance of 12 different alien species that controlled a significant portion of the galaxy's trade routes. The meeting had been cordial, even friendly. But the aliens had made one thing crystal clear. They would only engage in full diplomatic and economic relations with species that demonstrated cultural compatibility through intimate understanding. For most alien species in the Confederation, this meant a simple exchange of scholars and artists. But for humans, the Zelhari had proposed something unprecedented: a marriage exchange program. One human would marry a Zelhari, and one Zelhari would marry a human, creating the first interspecies unions in recorded galactic history. The problem was that no one had volunteered from Earth's population. Not the diplomats, not the scientists, not even the adventure seekers, who usually jumped at any chance to make history. The reason was simple. The Zelhari had refused to allow any visual contact before the marriage ceremony. It was, they claimed, a sacred tradition that prevented superficial judgments based on physical appearance. Marcus had been working as a xenobiological consultant for the United Earth government when the call went out for volunteers. At 32, he was single, had no family ties that couldn't be managed long distance, and possessed a deep curiosity about alien life forms that had driven his entire career. More importantly, he was broke. The compensation package was staggering. Not just the initial payment of 5 million credits, but full citizenship in the Zelhari Confederation, access to their advanced technology, and a guaranteed position in the new Earth Zelhari Research Initiative. It would solve every financial problem he'd ever had and give him opportunities beyond anything Earth could offer. But it would also mean marrying a completely unknown alien being. The contract stipulated that both parties would live together for a minimum of 1 Earth year, during which time they would participate in cultural exchange activities and document their experiences for both governments. After the year, they could choose to continue the marriage or dissolve it amicably, though dissolution would require returning half the compensation. Marcus had spent weeks researching the Zelhari, but information was frustratingly limited. They were described as humanoid in basic structure, but with significant physiological differences. They were said to be highly intelligent, peaceful, and deeply committed to honor and family bonds. Their lifespans were roughly equivalent to humans, and they were capable of consuming Earth-based foods, though they required certain mineral supplements. What they looked like, however, remained a complete mystery. The decision had kept him awake for countless nights. His friends thought he was insane. His colleagues at the research station were split between admiration and concern. His ex-girlfriend had called him the most desperate man in the solar system when she heard about it. But something about the challenge intrigued him. Humanity prided itself on adaptability, on the ability to form bonds and build relationships under any circumstances. If he could make this work, if he could prove that humans could truly connect with an utterly alien being, it would open doors for his entire species. The morning he signed the contract, Marcus felt a strange mixture of terror and excitement. The Zelhari representative, communicating through a translation device that rendered their voice as a pleasant, genderless tone, had been both formal and somehow warm in their explanation of the process. "Your bride is called Zarathes Vinara," the translator had announced. "She is considered highly accomplished in her field of bioengineering and has volunteered for this union with great enthusiasm. Like you, she seeks to bridge the gap between our species." Marcus had tried to ask questions about her personality, her interests, her hopes for the marriage. But the Zelhari representative had politely deflected most inquiries. "All will be revealed in time," they had said. "The joy of discovery is part of our sacred bonding process. The wedding ceremony was scheduled to take place aboard a neutral vessel in space between Earth and the Zellery homeworld. Both governments would send representatives, and the event would be broadcast across human space as a historic moment. Marcus would have exactly 1 hour to prepare himself mentally after seeing his bride for the first time before the ceremony began. As his departure date approached, Marcus threw himself into preparation. He studied Zelhari customs, learned basic phrases in their primary language, and even took classes in what Earth's cultural experts believed might be appropriate wedding etiquette. He bought new clothes, got in the best shape of his life, and practiced meditation to calm his increasingly frantic nerves. His apartment became a shrine to the unknown. He found himself talking to empty air sometimes, practicing conversations he might have with Zarathus. Would she be tall or short, scaled or furred, or something else entirely? Would she be disappointed when she saw him? Would he be able to hide his reaction when he saw her? The night before his departure, Marcus stood at his window looking out at the blue curve of Earth in the distance. Luna Station was quiet during the night cycle, and he could hear the gentle hum of the life support systems that kept them all alive in the void. Tomorrow, he would leave behind everything familiar and step into the unknown. His personal communicator chimed softly. A message from the Zelhari representative. Zarathus. Venera sends her greetings and expresses her eagerness to meet her new life partner. She wishes you to know that she has great respect for your courage in undertaking this journey. Marcus smiled despite his nerves. At least she seemed kind. That had to count for something. The transport ship that came for him the next morning was a joint human-Zelhari design, sleek and elegant in ways that human ships rarely achieved. The crew was mixed species, and Marcus got his first close look at beings that weren't human. The Zelhari crew members wore full environmental suits, but he could see that they moved with a fluid grace that was distinctly non-human. During the 3-day journey to the rendezvous point, Marcus spent most of his time in his quarters, alternately reading about interspecies psychology and staring out at the stars. The ship's human captain, a gruff woman named Rodriguez, checked on him regularly. Second thoughts? She asked during one visit. Every 5 minutes, Marcus admitted. But I'm still going through with it. Good, Rodriguez said. We need people like you. People willing to take the big risks for the big rewards. Humanity's future might depend on connections like the one you're about to make. On the final day of the journey, Marcus received another message from Zarathus. This time, it was longer and more personal. She wrote about her work in bioengineering, her love of what translated as harmony gardens, apparently a form of art that combined living plants with mineral sculptures, and her hope that they could find common ground despite their obvious differences. I confess to nervousness, the message concluded, but also to great excitement. My research into human culture has filled me with admiration for your species' resilience and creativity. I believe we have much to learn from each other. Marcus found himself genuinely looking forward to meeting her. Whatever she looked like, she seemed intelligent, thoughtful, and kind. Those were qualities he'd always valued in relationships, even if he'd never imagined testing them across species boundaries. The neutral vessel where the ceremony would take place was enormous, a diplomatic station maintained jointly by several galactic civilizations. As their transport docked, Marcus could see ships from dozens of different worlds through the viewports. Representatives from across the galaxy had come to witness this unprecedented event. In his quarters aboard the station, Marcus put on the formal clothes he'd brought for the ceremony, a simple but elegant Earth-style suit in midnight blue, chosen to show respect for the solemnity of the occasion while maintaining his human identity. His hands were shaking slightly as he fastened the cufflinks. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. When it opened, a figure in flowing robes stood in the corridor. The being was tall and moved with the same fluid grace he'd observed in the ship's crew. But the environmental suit had been replaced by ceremonial garments that revealed nothing of what lay beneath. Marcus Chen of Earth, a voice said through a translation device. I am Counselor Hethmara, and I will guide you to the Revelation Chamber. Are you prepared to meet your life partner? Marcus took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. The corridor they walked down was lined with representatives from various species. All gathered to witness this historic moment. Marcus felt their eyes on him. Some curious, some skeptical, some openly admiring his courage. At the end of the corridor stood two doors, side by side. Your bride waits behind the left door, Hethmara explained. You will enter together and have 1 hour to become acquainted before the ceremony. Remember, this meeting determines not just your personal future, but the future relationship between your species and ours. Marcus nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd dreamed of, waited behind that door, along with a being he'd never seen, from a species he barely understood, who would become his wife in just 1 hour. He reached for the handle, paused for just a moment to steady himself, and stepped into the unknown. The chamber was softly lit with what appeared to be bioluminescent panels that cast a warm, golden glow throughout the space. The air carried a faint scent that reminded Marcus of ocean breeze mixed with something floral he couldn't identify. In the center of the room, with her back turned toward him, stood a figure that was unmistakably alien, yet surprisingly familiar in its basic proportions. Zarathes Venera turned slowly, and Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She was beautiful, but in a way that challenged every human concept of beauty he'd ever known. Her skin had a subtle iridescent quality, shifting between pale gold and soft silver as she moved, as if she were covered in the finest scales that caught and reflected light. Her features were delicately angular, with high cheekbones, and a jawline that tapered to an elegant point. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, a deep violet color that seemed to hold flecks of silver starlight. What struck him most was her expression of wonder and nervousness that mirrored his own. She was studying his face with the same careful attention he was giving hers, and when their eyes met, she offered a smile that, while different from a human smile, due to her slightly pointed teeth, conveyed the same warmth and tentative hope. "Hello, Marcus Chen of Earth," she said. And her voice without the translation device was musical, with harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. "I am. How do you say? Very pleased to meet you at last." "The pleasure is mine, Zarathes," Marcus replied, surprised at how steady his own voice sounded. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." Marcus' reply, "With Acher is mine, Zarathes." Her skin shifted through a spectrum of soft colors, and she ducked her head in what he instinctively recognized as embarrassment or pleasure. "You are also pleasing to observe," she said. "Your species' appearance is quite striking." I had not expected such expressive eyes. They stood facing each other for a moment, the weight of their situation settling around them. This was it, the person he would be married to in less than an hour. Someone he'd just met, but who would share his life for the next year, at minimum. "Perhaps we should sit," Marcus suggested, gesturing toward the comfortable-looking furniture arranged near one wall. "We have much to discuss, and not much time to do it." As they settled onto what appeared to be a living plant shaped into bench form, something that fascinated Marcus. From a biological perspective, Zarathes smoothed her ceremonial robes and looked at him with an expression of determined curiosity. "I must confess something," she said. "I have been studying human customs for months, but I am still uncertain about many things. Your species seems to place great importance on what you call romantic love in marriage partnerships. This is not common among my people." Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. "How do marriages work in Zelhari culture?" "We typically choose partners based on compatibility of goals, complementary skills, and mutual respect," she explained. "Emotional attachment usually develops over time, if it develops at all. Many of our most successful unions are what you might call partnerships of purpose, rather than romantic love matches. That's not uncommon in human history either," Marcus said. "Arranged marriages, marriages for political or economic reasons. Though modern human culture does tend to emphasize romantic love as an ideal. Zarathus nodded thoughtfully. I have read about this in your literature and entertainment media. It seems both beautiful and chaotic. Your emotions appear to be much more intense than ours. Is that a problem for you? Marcus asked, suddenly worried. The intensity? I mean, no, she said quickly, and her skin shifted to warmer tones. It is fascinating. I hope to understand it better. And I hope, she paused, seeming to search for words. I hope that you will not be disappointed if my emotional expressions are different from what you are accustomed to. Marcus felt a wave of relief and genuine affection for this thoughtful, honest being. We're from different species, different worlds, different cultures. We're bound to misunderstand each other sometimes. What matters is that we're both willing to try. She smiled again, and this time, the expression seemed more natural. Yes, I am very willing to try. Your messages during the journey here gave me hope that you are someone I can work with, perhaps even grow to care for. Tell me about your work, Marcus said, genuinely curious. Bioengineering sounds fascinating. Zarathus's entire demeanor brightened, and she began describing her research into what she called living architecture. Buildings and structures grown from specially modified organisms, rather than constructed from dead materials. As she spoke, her hands moved expressively, and Marcus found himself drawn not just to her words, but to the graceful way she communicated. On my homeworld, we have entire cities that grow and adapt to their inhabitants' needs, she explained. The walls can adjust their opacity based on privacy requirements, regulate temperature and humidity automatically, and even provide nutrition through fruit-bearing surfaces. It is efficient and harmonious with the natural world. That's incredible, Marcus said. Could such techniques work on human worlds? That is part of what I hope to discover, she said. Your species' approach to technology is so different from ours. You build and manufacture, while we grow and cultivate. I believe there could be great benefits to combining our methods. As they talked, Marcus found himself relaxing. Zarathus was brilliant, passionate about her work, and genuinely interested in learning about human perspectives. When he described his own research into alien biochemistry, she asked insightful questions and offered observations that opened up new avenues of thought he'd never considered. You mentioned harmony gardens in one of your messages, Marcus said. Could you tell me about those? Zarathus's expression became almost wistful. They are difficult to describe in your language. Imagine a space where living plants and mineral formations are arranged not just for visual beauty, but to create specific emotional resonances. The colors, scents, sounds, and even electromagnetic fields work together to induce states of peace, contemplation, or joy. It sounds like a combination of art and therapy. Yes, exactly. Her excitement was infectious. I have been working on designs that might appeal to human sensibilities. Your species seems to respond strongly to certain color combinations and natural sounds. I would very much like to create a harmony garden that could benefit both our peoples. A soft chime indicated that their time was nearly up. Marcus felt a pang of regret. He was just beginning to feel comfortable with this remarkable being, and now they had to go through a formal ceremony in front of hundreds of witnesses. Are you nervous about the wedding? He asked. Zarathus considered the question. Nervous, yes, but also hopeful. You are not what I expected, Marcus Chen of Earth. You are more thoughtful, more willing to listen than the profiles suggested your species typically is. I believe we may indeed find success in this arrangement. I feel the same way, Marcus said honestly. I was terrified that we'd have nothing in common, that we'd be complete strangers forced to live together. But talking with you, it feels like meeting a new colleague who might become a friend. That is a good beginning, she said. Friendship has grown into deeper bonds before, for both our species. The door opened, and Counselor Hethmara appeared. Marcus stood and offered Zarathus his hand. She looked at it for a moment with curiosity. then placed her own hand in his. Her skin was warm and had a slightly different texture than human skin. But the gesture felt natural and right. "Together?" he asked. "Together," she agreed. They walked side by side toward the ceremonial chamber, where representatives from dozens of worlds waited to witness the first interspecies marriage in galactic history. The chamber was magnificent, with crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. At the center stood an altar that appeared to be carved from a single massive gemstone, its faceted surface reflecting the light in rainbow patterns across the assembled guests. The ceremony itself was a blend of human and Zelhari traditions. They exchanged rings, simple bands made from metals native to both their worlds. They spoke vows that had been carefully crafted by cultural experts from both species, promising to honor each other's differences while seeking common ground. When the officiant pronounced them married, Zara Thes explained that in Zelhari culture, the traditional gesture was to touch foreheads while sharing breath. Marcus found the intimacy of it both strange and moving, feeling her warm exhalation against his face as they completed their first truly intimate moment as husband and wife. The reception was a whirlwind of congratulations, interviews with galactic media, and formal presentations from various governmental representatives. Throughout it all, Marcus found himself watching Zarathes, noting how she handled the attention with poise and grace, always making sure to include him in conversations and treating him as a true partner rather than just the human side of an exotic experiment. When they were finally alone in their shared quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel that would take them to their new home, a research station positioned between Earth and Zelhari space, Marcus felt the full weight of what they'd just done. "We're actually married," he said, almost to himself. "Yes," Zarathes replied, settling gracefully onto one of the room's seating areas. "How do you feel about this development?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Honestly? Better than I thought I would. You're nothing like the frightening unknown I'd built up in my mind. You're just Kreese, Zarathes. Someone I'm looking forward to getting to know better." Her skin shifted to warm golden tones. "That is perhaps the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me," she said. "I share your sentiment, husband Marcus Chen. Ever, re, 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 re. Just Marcus is fine," he said with a smile. "We're going to be living together for at least a year. We might as well be comfortable with each other." As they settled in for their first night as a married couple, in separate sleeping areas, by mutual agreement, until they knew each other better, Marcus reflected on how different this was from any future he'd ever imagined for himself. But as he listened to the soft, musical quality of Zarathes's breathing in the next room, he found himself genuinely excited about the journey they were about to begin together. 6 months into their marriage, Marcus woke to find Zarathes standing at the viewport of their research station quarters, her silhouette outlined against the starfield beyond. She had taken to wearing human-style clothing during their daily routines, though she still preferred the flowing lines of Zelhari fashion. This morning, she wore a simple blue dress that complemented the shifting colors of her skin, which had become more vibrant and varied as she grew more comfortable in their shared space. "Another early morning contemplation?" Marcus asked softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned and smiled, an expression that had grown warmer and more familiar over their months together. "I was thinking about the message we received yesterday from the Confederation Council." Marcus sat up, immediately alert. The message had been unexpected and concerning. The Confederation Council had requested a formal report on their marriage experiment, but the tone had suggested more than routine bureaucratic interest. There were rumors of political tensions within the Confederation, with some member species questioning the wisdom of close alliance with humanity. "The bioterrorism accusations against Earth colony Kepler 442? B?" Marcus asked. "Yes. The Vorthak delegation is claiming that human colonists deliberately introduced modified pathogens to accelerate terraforming in ways that could threaten native ecosystems." Zarathes moved away from the viewport and sat on the edge of their shared workspace, where her living architecture models grew alongside his biochemical analysis equipment. Over their months together, their separate research projects had begun to merge in fascinating ways. Marcus's expertise in alien biochemistry had proven invaluable for Zarathus's bioengineering work, while her understanding of symbiotic biological systems had opened entirely new approaches to his research. They had published 3 joint papers that were causing excitement in scientific circles across multiple species. "Do you think there's truth to the accusations?" Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. Zarathus was quiet for a long moment, her skin shifting through cooler tones that Marcus had learned indicated deep thought or concern. "I have studied human colonial records extensively since we began our life together. Your species is aggressive in its expansion methods compared to most Confederation members, but deliberately creating bioweapons." She shook her head. "That is not consistent with the humans I have come to know." Her faith in humanity touched Marcus deeply. Over their months together, Zarathus had shown a remarkable ability to see past surface actions to underlying motivations. She had helped him understand that what other species saw as human recklessness or aggression often stemmed from the same curiosity and adaptability that made humans capable of connecting across vast cultural differences. "The real problem," Marcus said, "is that our marriage was supposed to prove human Confederation compatibility. If the Council starts viewing humans as a threat, then our experiment becomes irrelevant, and all the progress we have made becomes meaningless." Zarathus finished. "I know. I have been considering this problem since yesterday." They had made remarkable progress, both personally and professionally. Their marriage had evolved from cautious partnership to genuine affection. Marcus found himself looking forward to their evening conversations about everything from galactic politics to the philosophical implications of their respective scientific work. Zarathus had developed what she called warm fondness for him, which she explained was as close to romantic love as her species typically experienced. More importantly for their respective governments, they had become proof that meaningful interspecies cooperation was possible. Their joint research projects were already influencing policy discussions in both human space and the Confederation. Their monthly reports had become required reading for diplomats across known space. "There might be a solution," Marcus said slowly. "An idea forming. What if we could prove that the Kepler 442b situation was a misunderstanding? If we could show that human terraforming methods, while different, aren't actually threatening to native ecosystems?" Zarathus's eyes brightened with interest. "You believe we could investigate this ourselves? Think about it," Marcus said, growing excited. "You understand biological systems better than almost anyone. In known space, I know human biochemistry and terraforming techniques inside and out. Together, we might be able to analyze what really happened on Kepler 442b. The Council would allow us to travel there? They might, if we frame it right. We're not just married anymore. We're a functioning research team with credentials in exactly the areas needed for this investigation. And as the subjects of the interspecies marriage experiment, we have a vested interest in maintaining human Confederation relations." Zarathus stood and began pacing, her movements reflecting the fluid grace that Marcus had come to find both alien and deeply attractive. "There are political risks. If we find evidence that supports the Vorthok accusations, then we report it honestly," Marcus said. "That's what scientists do. But I don't think we will. I think we'll find that human terraforming methods are misunderstood, not malicious. And if we are wrong," Marcus met her gaze steadily, "then we help figure out how to fix the problem. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be about? Facing challenges together? Why? One of the Prost. One of the Prost." Something shifted in Zarathus's expression, and her skin took on the warm golden tones that Marcus had learned indicated deep emotional response. "You continue to surprise me, husband," she said softly. 6 months ago, I thought I was entering a political arrangement that might become friendship. I did not expect to find someone willing to risk everything for principles we both believe in. The word husband had evolved in meaning between them. What had started as a formal title had gradually become an endearment, a way of acknowledging the unique bond they had built. Marcus felt his heart speed up at her tone. "What are you saying, Zarathus?" "I am saying that I love you," she said simply. Not in the intense, overwhelming way that humans often describe love, but in the deep, steady way of my people. You have become essential to my happiness, and I want to face whatever comes next as true partners, not just experimental subjects. Marcus felt a rush of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. Over their months together, he had grown to love Zarathus's intelligence, her gentle humor, her unwavering integrity. But he had been afraid to push for deeper emotional connection, knowing that her species experienced emotions differently than humans. "I love you too," he said, crossing to take her hands in his. "And I want to make this work. Not just for our governments, but for us." Their proposal to investigate the Kepler 442b situation was met with initial skepticism from both human and Confederation authorities. But their track record as successful collaborators ultimately won approval. 2 weeks later, they were aboard a joint science vessel heading toward the disputed colony world. The journey gave them time to plan their investigation and to deepen their personal relationship. For the first time since their marriage, they shared sleeping quarters, something that had evolved naturally from their growing emotional intimacy. Marcus discovered that Zarathus generated a soft, soothing bioluminescence when relaxed, creating patterns on her skin that were both beautiful and comforting in the darkness. Kepler 442b was a world in transition, its atmosphere thick with the organic compounds that human terraforming techniques use to accelerate ecosystem development. The colony was small but thriving, with settlements that showed the characteristic human approach of working with and around natural features, rather than simply replacing them. The investigation took 3 weeks of intensive fieldwork. Marcus and Zarathus worked side by side, analyzing soil samples, studying atmospheric composition, and interviewing colonists about their terraforming protocols. What they found was both simpler and more complex than either had expected. The human terraforming methods had indeed introduced modified organisms into the planetary ecosystem, but these organisms were designed to work symbiotically with native life forms, not to replace them. The threatening pathogens that had alarmed the Vorthok were actually beneficial bacteria that helped native plants process the enhanced atmospheric conditions created by terraforming. However, the Vorthak concerns weren't entirely unfounded. The modified organisms could theoretically become problematic if they spread beyond their intended ecosystems without proper monitoring. The humans had simply been approaching terraforming from a different philosophical perspective than most Confederation species, prioritizing adaptation and integration over preservation and separation. "It's a cultural misunderstanding magnified by scientific differences," Marcus explained to Zarathus as they compiled their final report. "Humans see terraforming as creating harmony between imported and native life. Most Confederation species see it as creating safe separation between the two. Both approaches have merit," Zarathus replied. "But, without proper communication about methodologies, either approach can appear threatening to outsiders." Their report recommended a series of joint terraforming protocols that would combine human adaptability with Confederation oversight principles. More importantly, they proposed an expanded cultural exchange program that would help prevent similar misunderstandings in the future. The response to their findings exceeded their wildest expectations. The Confederation Council not only accepted their recommendations, but formally appointed them as special liaisons for Human Confederation scientific cooperation. The Vorthak delegation, after reviewing their detailed analysis, withdrew their accusations and requested permission to study human terraforming techniques for potential application on their own worlds. On their return journey to the research station, Marcus and Zarathus received a message from both their governments. The interspecies marriage experiment was being declared a complete success, and they were being offered a choice. They could end their marriage as originally planned, or they could continue as the first permanent interspecies family in galactic history. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked, though he already knew his own answer. Zarathus smiled and took his hand. "I want to continue building the life we have started together. I want to have children who will be citizens of two worlds and bridges between two species. I want to grow old with you among the stars, solving problems that no one thought could be solved." "Even though it means we'll never be entirely normal?" Marcus asked. "We'll always be the experimental couple, the proof of concept for interspecies relations." "Marcus," Zarathus said, her skin glowing with soft gold light, "when have either of us ever wanted to be normal?" Years later, when Marcus and Zarathus had become legendary figures in interspecies relations, when their children were attending schools on a dozen different worlds, when their joint research had led to breakthroughs that benefited every species in the galaxy, people would ask them about the secret to their success. Marcus would always say that the secret was simple. They had chosen to see their differences not as obstacles to overcome, but as opportunities to create something entirely new. Zarathus would add that love, in any form, and between any beings, was always worth the risk of the unknown. Their marriage had begun as an experiment in compatibility between species, but it had become proof of something far more profound. That connection, understanding, and love could transcend any boundary, even the vast reaches of space between distant worlds. In choosing each other, they had chosen hope over fear, and in that choice, they had helped light the way for countless others to follow.